And I'd now like to have the opening remarks from our President Suyong Nanalingam. Thank you.
My warmest greetings to you all. It is my honor to welcome you to this important webinar, Break the Silence and the Violence, dedicated to human rights on 10th of December, Human Rights Day. It is particularly important to reflect on human rights as we mark the end of 16 days of activism, a campaign which raises awareness of violence against all women and girls. Today, we come together not only to learn and to reflect, but also to strengthen the collective resolve we need to drive meaningful change. Violence against women and girls is a grave human rights violation, an issue that affects every community, every society, and every country. And yet, despite these overwhelming realities, violence against women and girls is not inevitable. It is preventable, and prevention begins with understanding. This year's Gender Snapshot report by the UN Women delivers a sobering reminder. 30 years after the adoption of Beijing Platform for Action, the world's most ambitious blueprint for achieving equality, gender equality remains far from realized. As long as gender inequality exists, violence not only persists, it intensifies. Violence against women and girls is both a product and a driver of gender inequality. Women and girls bear the disproportionate weight of this failure. We must also recognize the growing influence of global crisis on violence against all women and girls. Climate change, for example, is not gender neutral. Displacement, resource scarcity, and food insecurity heighten household and community stress, increasing the risk of violence. So, ending violence against women and girls is not only a matter of rights and justice, but it is also essential to effective climate action and sustainable peace and international security. Today's event brings together a distinguished panel of speakers whose expertise and advocacy illuminate these complex challenges and pathways to change. We are very honored to welcome Linda Witong, Tania Gómez Herazo, Ngotzi Nawadu, Lola Abrahamian, Berthe Vos-Neven. They will explore emerging issues and offer powerful calls for global and local action that we as Soroptimists must heed. I would also like to express my heartfelt appreciation to SI Director of Advocacy, Lee Elwood Brown, for her leadership in organizing and spearheading this important event. She will also serve as our moderator and provide closing remarks to guide us from reflection into action. Thank you for being here and for your determination to stand with all women and girls everywhere. Together, let us continue the work of transforming awareness into action and action into lasting change.
Thank you, Joe. So one thing, we will give apologies from one of our speakers, Ngozi. She won't be able to be with us this evening, so we have 4 speakers. Ngozi also had an urgent work conference she had to go to with technicality issues, so apologies from Ngozi. And I'd now like to ask Tania. So you see Tania. These are the order of the speakers will be Tania, Linda, Lola, and then Berthe for you. So I would like to invite Tania to begin with, and her bio will be put into the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, for the presentation and giving me the word today. Before we start, I will set all the research that I did to prepare this keynote today, so that you will have something to take on later on. I will share it on the chat. I would say good afternoon, everyone. Today is a special day. It's the 10th of December. We are commemorating the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the UN in 1948, a landmark document promoting fundamental rights for all people and a pivotal moment in the 16 days of activism. While we work to end violence in physical spaces, a parallel crisis unfolds in the digital era, one that affects all women and girls at unprecedented scale. This crisis is reaching, as we speak, into homes, classrooms, and workplaces with a high speed. Yet, here lies our greatest opportunity. Artificial intelligence, governed ethically, can become a powerful shield against any type of digital risks. I want to introduce you the concept. AI ethics is a framework of moral principles guiding responsible AI development, focusing on fairness, transparency, accountability, privacy, and human well-being to ensure AI benefits society, prevents harm, and aligns with human values, which is the crucial aspect for building trust, protecting rights, and integrating AI safely into our world. Where lies the challenge? Okay, I really need to ask you, let me be direct about what we are facing. UNESCO research shows that 58% of young people globally have experienced online harassment. Joe, I am not seeing the slide, so deepfake technology enables image-based abuse at scale. Algorithmic bias in content moderation means that women and girls' reports on violence could often go unseen. While harmful content thrives and is out there, chatbots trained on biased datasets can replicate gender stereotypes, and cybersecurity risks disproportionately expose all women and girls to threats like stalking and doxing. This isn't a technology problem. This is a problem that does not have directly a technology solution. This is a governance challenge, a human challenge rooted in how we design, deploy, and oversee AI systems. UN bodies like UN Women, ITU, UNICEF, and ILO, they recognize these challenges and they are working on it. There is an example on the white paper on AI governance from UNICEF and ITU, and it is very clear because they mention how AI development must be inclusive, rooted in human rights, and anchored in the UN Charter. Diversity in algorithm design matters. Inclusive stakeholder participation in governance matters, and accountability for risks and harm matters. So, what does ethical governance look like for breaking the silence? First of all, transparency and accountability. Platform algorithms that amplify risks and or abuse must be audited. We need to make sure that these algorithms are audited. All women and girls must have also a seat at the table when these systems are built. When risks become real harm, there must be redress. The second point I want to address today on how it looks like breaking the silence. We need digital safety by design. We need AI systems that protect. Smart content moderation that catches deepfakes and harassment. Secure reporting mechanisms for survivors that preserve anonymity and connect them instantly to support. Anonymous hotlines powered by AI that guide people to shelters, legal aid, counseling, without compromising their identity. Those tools exist, they work, they are being used, but support is needed to scale those tools. A third point I want to bring to your attention today is cybersecurity for every woman and girl. All women and girls in every role and in every community are exposed to digital risks and attacks that affect their safety and rights. Cybersecurity must be treated not as a privilege, but as essential human rights infrastructure for everyone. Every woman and girl should have access to practical digital security skills and tools. Institutions, services, platforms that women rely on must be built on resilient, privacy-respecting systems. Global cooperation on clear cybersecurity norms and standards is key to making this protection real in every country, in every place. The fourth point I want to bring forward is very close to my heart. I am an ambassador on women in STEM worldwide. But women in leadership, that's quite a point. When all women and girls help lead and design AI systems become fairer, safer, and more effective for everyone. All of us can play a catalytic role by championing women and girls, supporting girls and young women in STEM, and opening pathways into leadership. Let's work on the pipeline for the future. By investing in diverse talent, we are also ensuring that the next generation of AI reflects lived realities, creativity, and strength of all the women and girls. Because technology is here and it's meant to serve. Today, we stand on a foundation that is strong. There are concrete frameworks. There are specific guidelines. The UN is committed for gender-responsive AI, and that commitment is firmly established. For example, ITU's AI governance standards are advancing. Partnerships between civil society, technology sectors, and governments are being built every day, transforming frameworks into creating meaningful action. And that's what we need, meaningful action. Now is the time, I would say, to turn those commitments into tangible progress by enforcing robust digital safety standards, promoting diversity and inclusion in tech. For example, how we hire people in tech, how we hire people in STEM, and investing deeply in women's digital literacy and cybersecurity skills. When we are embracing the UN Pact for the Future and Global Digital Compact vision for inclusive AI governance, this is essential for lasting impact, for looking towards the future. As Soroptimists, our remarkable convening power is a catalyst for change, and I want you to remind that day in, day out. Because by maintaining active, solution-focused engagement with policymakers, funding AI ethics initiatives led by women from both the Global South and North, and advocating tirelessly for equity, we ensure that progress remains centered on those who are the most affected. We should not be passive consumers. We should be builders of a future where technology empowers. Every woman and girl that we uplift, every digital literacy program we support, and every platform we hold accountable represents a step toward a digital world that leaves no one behind. Together, these actions are powerful expressions of solidarity and a clear commitment to inclusive, safe, and just digital futures for all of us. Before closing, I want to say that these last 16 days are a reminder that change is possible. That same energy, that same commitment must now reach the digital spaces where all women and girls that are at risk are taken into account, and at the same time have opportunity to learn how to step into a digital future. AI ethics are not abstract. It is personal, very personal. It is protective, and it is based on education. When we govern AI with transparency, accountability, and diversity, we are not just building better algorithms. We are building safer digital worlds for all women and girls. The technology is here. It's evolving, it's changing, it's growing, and is already offering powerful tools for safety and inclusion. There are very valuable global frameworks out there. They are in place. And new ones are emerging to guide ethical, gender-responsive AI and cybersecurity. What is needed now from all of us, for everyone, is shared leadership, confidence to act, willingness to learn, to collaborate, to stand together strong, but also imagination to build a digital future where all women and girls can participate, create, and thrive safely online and offline. Before my time is over, I want to make a citation from Cristina Boetti 2 days ago. She's a counselor of virtual worlds and AI at the ITU. And Cristina said, even as AI expands what is possible and sometimes the impossible, I would add, it is still human imagination, human courage, and human solidarity that carry humanity forward. I leave you with these words, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you very much, Tania. How wonderful to give us so many points and so many opportunities to break the silence, to stop violence, to break the silence to stop the violence. The digital risks are not technology problem, but they're governance. So it's humans. We have the opportunity of making a difference in that area. The 4 pillars of change, your transparency and accountability that matter, digital safety and design, cyber security for all women and girls, and women in leadership. All the frameworks are in place, our UN commitment to gender responsive AI, AI governance, standards advancing, and the partnerships with civil society tech and government developing. We are builders of the future. That really does give us lots of point to have projects and work and be positive going forward to use the tools. Thank you very much indeed. I call for 2 to 3 questions from the floor for Tania, because she now has to go on to work. If there's any come through, Margaret, that you can see?
Not at the moment, Lee.
And if you see the react down the bottom, and you'll see raise your hand and you'll come up to the top corner of the screen so we can see you if you've got a question. You're getting lots of claps, Tania? I would say if we can't see questions at this stage, if any come up, I will contact you. Oh, Sarah has said, I agree with everything you said. And
She's
Sarah's
my
very good
peer
with
out
AI.
there in Australia.
Yes, you know, Sarah, I have to connect you with Sarah because she does AI as well.
She's an awarded tech woman in Australia, and I have a lot of respect for her work. And Sarah, thank you so much for your words. They mean a
Yes,
lot
thank
to me.
you. Yes, it's very good to have a companion like that. Thank you, Tania. So we'll go on to the next speaker.
We do have
Is
one
Linda here?
question, Lee.
Okay.
Lisa Davis has associate, Soroptimist UK. How are we going to get all worldwide governments to comply and actually do?
That is a really, really good question. How do we get all stakeholders into action? I must say that that's only possible when we collaborate together, and those collaboration frameworks exist on UN level, on regional level, and I'm going to give a concrete example on Europe. I am posting on the chat an example how Europe has key directive and acts frameworks who are the result of all what we see on UN level conversations, multi-stakeholder participation, I cannot say the word anymore. How we cooperate on global level, it's translated to regions, and those regions are responsible to translate into legislations, regulations. And I'm giving the example of Europe because that's the region where I am based and I know very well on the technological area. So you have received from me how directives are an example where governments are taking action, regions are taking action, and that's how a translation can be made from the UN Global Digital Compact to real action. In the case of Europe, the NIS2 directive is compliant as from this year, and also DORA. So these are real mechanisms that are being put in place. And that's the same for other regions in the world. And yeah, Lisa, if I can help you online with any other type of questions, I will be glad to do that.
Anyone
Any other
else?
question?
I think we'll move on. I can't see Linda there. I think we'll go on to our next speaker. Thank you, Tania. Thank you very, very much on behalf of
Have a good
everyone
day.
here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck with what's happening. Bev, did you by any chance hear back from Linda? No. Lola, do you mind taking the next slot? Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Lee. So, good morning, everyone. Well, good morning from my neck of the woods, which is Southern California. And I'm here to talk about technology facilitated gender-based violence from a law enforcement perspective. Next slide, please. In law enforcement, no matter what incident we are responding to, there is a common approach to it. And we have found that this approach works, whether it's a crime after the fact or an in progress incident. And it applies to these types of crimes as well. Hopefully, I can help you see how by using these steps, we can help better understand how to best approach these issues. First, we assess the situation. Next, we identify the issue and or the immediate threat. Then we neutralize the threat or contain it. Then we contain the incident, stop it from expanding, and then we address the crime, which could be investigative, evidence collection, etc., meanwhile providing post-incident care for the victim and those involved. Next slide, please. Overall, this is done once all this is done, excuse me, in law enforcement, we in law enforcement start to think about prevention. How did this happen? Why did it happen? And what can we do to prevent it in the future? To prevent others from being victimized. And this is done by understanding the dynamics of the incident, education, whether it's to our officers or to the public, setting parameters into place to deter similar incidents in the future. Meanwhile, addressing prevention, we need to take into consideration the possibility of emerging variations of the same crime. An example of this is in science. If there's a new virus, we can come up with strategies to address the virus. However, as we know, viruses mutate and evolve, thus present itself in a new form. In law enforcement, we need to monitor for new variants of similar crimes. Therefore, we need to adjust and or modify our response and possible prevention strategies, just as we do in science. More people think, or most people think that police are there just to effect an arrest and move on to the next incident. However, a good agency will put into place preventative measures to dissuade criminals. And it's the age-old problem-solving model which is used. You identify the problem, identify the stakeholders, come up with desired outcomes, develop and execute an action plan, meanwhile continuously monitoring, evaluating, and improving because you need to modify and adjust wherever there is a need. Next slide, please. Now that we understand the law enforcement perspective on responding to an incident, let's understand what technology-facilitated based gender violence is. It's also known as cyber violence, which is any form of gender-based violence that is committed, amplified, or aggravated by using technology to cause virtual and or in-person harm. These could be threats, harassment, bullying, assault, sextortion, coercion, deep fake pornography, or online grooming and trafficking, to name a few, all of which is done using technology. The impacts of such crimes can be severe and just as long-lasting as an in-person crime or act of violence. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, women and children, as well as marginalized groups, are disproportionately targeted by cyber violence, as they are less likely to report the incident and often feel shame. In 2024, UNICEF estimated that 1 in 8 children globally experienced online sextortion or sexual extortion of abuse, the majority of which were girls. In 2024, the EU Fundamental Rights Agency estimated 1 in 2 women between the ages of 18 and 29 experienced cyber violence in which sexualized content was most prevalent. Criminals target women and girls because they can get sexual gratification, power, or money with relatively low risk. Next slide, please. So understanding cyber violence is paramount, especially with the advent of AI and generative AI. Criminals can create hyper-realistic content very easily to target their victims. So I had to throw this slide in, which is kind of a little bit of levity here on a very serious topic. Todd, my partner, created these images of our dogs crocheting, which is my favorite pastime. And yes, our dogs look exactly like this. And so I was able to then post this on social media for fun. Next slide, please. So then I took an image of Todd, which I had just taken while we were traveling, and asked Grok, which is the AI platform for X, to add a girl to the photo. Those were my exact words, add a girl to the image. Grok generated this image with an unknown female. I then asked Grok to animate it, and this is what it produced. Joe, can you? Yeah, perfect. I did this in 2 takes, one as a still and the other animated. I have no idea who this woman is, so I blocked her face. But this is to show you how easy it is to create a fake image using AI, and I did this on my cell phone. Next slide. So, is the problem that AI and emerging technology exists, or rather how it's being used to manipulate others, specifically as it relates to gender-based violence? Technology is evolving faster than our ability to respond and set safeguards to address potential issues. We go back to the problem-solving model. We need to be aware of this and constantly reassess and identify new solutions for preventions. We are all overwhelmed by AI. It is an amazing tool, but we don't know where it's going. It's not going away. We can't be afraid of it. We need to learn how to use it, but use it effectively and understand that there will be people that use these technologies nefariously. So the issue is not the technology, but rather the misuse of it. And so the solution is to have better responses set in place for addressing the criminals and how to better protect ourselves. So now we ask, as Soroptimists, what is our approach? What should we be doing? It's a multi-pronged approach that requires action at every level. First and foremost, education, and it starts in webinars such as this. We need to make sure that our members understand and learn have digital literacy so that we can then educate those we serve. We need to begin at the community level. What works in my community may not work in your community. We need to address this at the schools, teens and preteens, and we need to engage young adults who are digital natives as they will better relate to the audience. The next is advocacy, engaging stakeholders, building connections with technology companies and law enforcement and elected officials to put into place a collaborative approach. We also need to provide resources. We should provide a list of local and state resources specific to our communities. It's all about the networking, collaboration, and helping each other to stay safe online. It is only through these efforts that we can be stronger together to break the violence and to break the silence and end the violence. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Lola. I can see a pattern coming in here where solutions are the name to start breaking the silence. It's that understanding of the issue and working out ways of how we can get projects to start helping all of our women and girls. But your law enforcement response to crime, which is a common approach, was very, very effective to adapt to some of the projects that we have. Your common examples, your women and children are disproportionately targeted by cyber violence, which seems to be the name of everything we have. Women and girls are being attacked from every direction. The AI generated images. I loved the dogs that you had there, and I'm thinking how cute. I could imagine people circulating that because they are so cute. Problem solutions and learn how to use them. And your Soroptimist call to action. Let's see how many projects we can create from the talk that you've given through advocacy, education, and resources. Education, collaborating, and networking to help each other stay safe online, which is what it's all about, particularly in Australia today. It just comes into power that we have brought in a law that all 16-year-old and under, it's a law for them not to use social media. So that's a very, very interesting talk that we're having tonight when that's coming in as part of protection for our younger children. Thank you very much, Lola.
Good morning, ladies and perhaps gentlemen. My name is Linda Witong, and I'm going to be talking to you about three basic topics: femicide and violence against women, and the recent trends, technology as a weapon, and the recent trends there, including two recent reports that just came out 2 days ago. That would be December 9th, actually 3 days ago now. And also, the third topic would be, again, in terms of trends on violence, what's getting worse. So let's begin. The first is femicide and violence against women. Next slide. One 137 women and girls are killed every day. That's every 10 minutes, a man kills a woman who's supposed to be safe with him. 60% of all women intentionally killed die at home, killed by someone they know. Nearly 50,000 women were killed last year alone. Next slide. And people keep asking in so often, why did this person stay? Well, of course, the real question is, why did he think he could? Why did he think he could kill her? Next slide. Now, one of the highest risks, and this is a trending topic, and it started in California, and California now has specific task force and training centers for this particular issue because it's such a dangerous risk and precursor to a victim being killed in the future. I cannot emphasize this topic enough. If you, as Soroptimists, educate your community, those around you, and perhaps the world about this danger, we may very well be saving a number of lives. What am I talking about? Strangulation is a dress rehearsal for murder. We call it choking. The legal term now is attempted homicide. Why do we call it that? Well, with respect to attempted strangulation, or as they would say, attempted choking, research has shown that it is a precursor to that suspect killing the victim in the future. One training center that's based in California said it's 750% more likely that the victim will be killed by the perpetrator with a gun or with some other weapon in the future. Another study, which was done by the Johns Hopkins study back in 2008, is that the victim was more likely, 7 to 8 times likely to be killed by that partner. And as one of the training experts in Northern California spoke about this issue, and Southern California, Casey Gwynn said, when a man puts his hand around a woman's neck, he has just raised his hand and said, I'm a killer. And unfortunately, that in many cases now can be true. So when you're out there and you're reaching out to victims of domestic violence, this is one of the red flags that you should educate the community on. Next slide. The crime is not passion, it's possession. When they say he snapped, no, he chose. When they say it's a crime of passion, again, it's a crime of possession. And when he said he lost control when he was trying to strangle a victim, strangulation is control. Among those of us who do profiling on homicide killers, strangulation is deemed as having the God complex. In other words, your control of this victim living or dying, because literally it's in your hands or in your Garrett's hands. He wants you to know, or the victim to know, that he's deciding whether you live or you die. Next slide. Now, there's another issue here, again, with attempted strangulation and trends, that if people say, well, this is a woman's issue, which, God, I hope they never say that in front of me because I'd read them the riot act. It's an officer safety alert also. In California and United States now, they are aware that 82% of offenders who kill law enforcement officers have a prior history of strangling an intimate partner. They know that 33 out of 44 American peace officers shot and killed in 2017 alone were killed by offenders with documented strangulation history. The rage of stranglers soaked in misogyny appears to produce what we now refer to as a loaded God complex, which can apply to police officers who may be trying to stop a future assault or whom they contact with. Next slide. The most dangerous moment in trending is still, and increases to be, when women tell a suspect that they're going to leave. 75% of the domestic violence homicides occur at or after separation. The first 18 months after leaving are the most lethal period. And when people say, well, she failed to leave. I mean, why didn't she do? You know, a victim or survivor of domestic violence has to have a system in place that doesn't fail to make her feel safe, and her family, and even her family pets, to leave the house and to leave the suspect. Paper doesn't stop bullets, but having a suspect behind bars can be a good start. Next slide. Now, other victims. These are another red flags that when you're educating your community, they should be looking out for. We, and I include myself in this, took a number of years to show statistics to the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, that people who are cruel to animals are a red flag or predictor that they're going to also be violent towards people, especially intimate partners. The FBI has now tracked animal cruelty as a Group A felony, like homicide. Why? Because animal cruelty predicts violence against humans. 89% of DV survivors report that their abuser threatened, harmed, or killed their pets. That's also a reason why we now have, with restraining orders, including pets, and we also now have placements for people with pets because sometimes they don't want to leave their pet at the mercy of this monster. 48% of the survivors delay leaving out of fear for their animals, and 19% of shelters only accepted pets. That is changing at this point in time. Next slide. The invisible injury. Okay. Now this, I'm talking about attempted strangulation, but I could also be talking about any head injury. What we have learned as prosecutors of homicides from our forensic pathologists who do the autopsies is that any type of brain injury from strangulation and even one single head injury can, if it takes only 7 seconds of pressure to render someone unconscious and begin brain injury, affect a victim's mental capacity. 75 to 90% of DV survivors report at least one traumatic brain injury from their partner, and it can be anything from attempted strangulation to being hit on the head with a hand to being pushed down and having a head injury. You name the tool and it's occurring. Now, when a victim has a head injury or attempted strangulation, if the brain injury is serious enough, they can die within hours, days, or weeks later. Progressive brain damage can occur, stroke, blood clot forming while they walked away thinking they were fine. Also, they may have walked away thinking, well, he only grabbed his hands around my neck, and think, okay, well, I can accept that, which is an interesting way of thinking. But then you have to ask the community and the survivors, yes, but can you accept the consequences that may occur down the line? 30%, 36% of domestic survivors from injuries to head, neck, or face are existing now. 7.5% are more likely to be survivors when presenting with these injuries in the future. And to the theory of, well, he left no marks around her neck or her head, doesn't have any cuts or, she doesn't need stitches. Well, the suspect left them on her brain. Next slide. Now, this is really important too. When you're explaining to audiences about why did the survivor, why does she seem apathetic? Why can't she remember, what happened? Or why does she get confused? Why is she having trouble speaking? Well, one of the symptoms is that when you have brain injury from even one head injury, attempted strangulation, there are symptoms such as memory loss. You can't remember assault details. You have confusion. You have trouble following questions. You have difficulty concentrating because you're losing track during your testimony. You have apathy. You seem flat and unemotional, or you have mood changes, angry, depressed, or inappropriately reactive. And what the system sees, we see a woman who can't keep her story straight, a woman who seems under the influence, a woman who doesn't seem to care. The system calls her a difficult client, a unreliable witness, someone whose case may very well get dismissed, and someone who may be disregarded by the community. Her brain, it ends up from forensic pathology, may even be more damaged than any FL player, that's a football player, but no one gave her a helmet to protect her head, and no one gave her a medical evaluation after she was assaulted in many, many cases. That's changing now because we are becoming aware of how horrific even one injury to your head or to your brain can be. And it's also explaining why witnesses or victims may not be what you call an excellent witness. And again, we may save lives, we may put perpetrators behind bars or out of the community and hold them accountable, even if we have a witness or victim who's exhibiting all of this, because now we understand the dynamics further. Next slide. What must we do? We need to lobby our law enforcement, our community who might give them the resources, our region and internationally about these recent trends. And we must, for example, in the case of strangulation and animal abuse, we must screen for that in every case where we have violence against anyone in the family, or for that matter, against even someone who has just began dating somebody, because these are red flags. We must focus resources on the separation period. The first 18 months are the most lethal. We should make sure that we have a community which offers these people, their children, their pets, a place to safely go. Train everyone with memory problems and confusion that they may be having a brain injury, and train the community to understand that they're not trying to be deceptive, apathetic, or uncooperative. They may be having brain injuries which cause this behavior. Tell law enforcement a strangulation history is also an officer safety issue. These men kill police officers. And if they need to have the documentation with training centers, or, for example, the California District Attorney Association is giving a several-day event on just the topic of strangulation alone and how dangerous it is and what everyone, first responders to the community, can do in California this year. If they are unaware of these trends, I will be glad to give them all of the research, all of the connections, and the California District Attorney's training schedule, just so they understand how serious this really is to them, to the community, and to the survivors. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next presentation deals with technology as a weapon. There are two new recent reports that just came out a couple of days ago that talk about some new statistics that I believe you should be aware of. For example, 40% of girls are harassed at least monthly, with 11% of girls almost daily. 58% of girls are personally experiencing online abuse. 97% of those who are being recorded on CSAM are girls only. That's 97% are girls only. The most common target, and this will now become obvious why I'm talking about girls, is 11 to 13-year-olds. There is a sharp rise even in 10-year-old girls. 192% is an annual rise, which deals with online enticement of girls. And 26,000 or more have reported cases where they have been dealing with financial extortion. Those are some of the statistics that we are dealing with. The short answer to all of this is pretty much every crime that can be done offline can be done online and is going up. And girls are apparently becoming the focus of these crimes, in part because they may not be digitally literate or even literate, and in part because they may be seen as being the most vulnerable and trusting of all possible victims. Next slide. The gap that I would talk about with technology is the protection gap. 1.8 billion women without legal protection from online harassment. Less than 40% of countries have cyber harassment laws. Technology facilitated violence. 16 to 58% of the women worldwide are impacted, depends on the region. 38% have experienced online violence, and 85% have witnessed digital violence. Next slide. The deepfake epidemic. 90 to 95% of deepfakes are non-consensual pornography images. There's been a 550% increase in deepfake videos from 2019 to 2023. 99% are targeting women. And as one cynic said, misogyny isn't a bug in this technology, it's a feature. Next slide. Child sexual abuse material, 97%, as we've said before, of child sexual abuse imagery shows girls, only girls. Girls in the UK have been blackmailed by teenage boys to carry out sexual acts and self-harm on a camera. Some have even been driven to suicide. Digital abuse is not confined to screens. The digital abuse that these girls suffered can carry not only long-lasting health effects, but it can include suicide. Next slide. The manosphere. This is on the increase. 2/3 of young men regularly engage with masculinity influencers online. And who are these masculinity influencers? Well, they can have online communities claiming to address men's struggles, but are really promoting harmful advice and misogynistic attitudes. And this is on the rise, folks. Growing links. Normalization of violence against women makes it seem like it's a normal thing to do. Radicalization is also linked to this, as well as extremist ideologies. As one individual observed, Laura Bates, AI tools allow the spread of manosphere control further using algorithmic tweaking. Next slide. 4 times the increase in misogynic contact on TikTok in just 5 days. 59% increase in violent incel rhetoric in 1 year. Algorithms amplify misogynic content to young men within minutes, whether they seek it out or not. The content increases from 13% to 56% of recommended videos. UN Secretary General has recommended that states should treat incels as an extremist threat. Next slide. Generational regression, okay? Due to misinformation and the misogynic content online as well as in person, a study across 31 countries has found that younger men are now more conservative on gender equality than their fathers. We are losing ground generationally. Things have gone far enough. This has resulted in 57% of Generation Z saying women's equality, girls' equality has gone far enough. 60% of the millennials share that, and 43% of baby boomers share that opinion. The younger generations, especially, are more likely to believe promoting women's equality discriminates against men. Next slide. Okay, now we get to the last of the topics that I will be talking about today, and that's what's getting worse. And starting with the new key statistics and reference. Next slide. Violence and migration. 7 times the increase in sexual violence is occurring in the Darien Gap, for example, and that's recently as 2024. 60% of Myanmar migrant women in Thailand experienced violence within 12 months, and immigration detention is rising globally, and migration itself is rising globally. Along certain routes, sexual violence is so predictable that women obtain contraceptives before departure to survive rape. The next topic is climate change, otherwise known as the violence multiplier. Next slide. The heat violence nexus. 28% increase in femicide occurs during heat waves. 4.7% increase in violence for every 1 degree centigrade rise. By 2090, 1 in 10 cases of intimate partner violence will be directly caused by climate change, and 40 million additional women and girls will be experiencing violence annually, especially with the 2 degrees centigrade scenario. There, of course, are actual reasonable explanation for this, with the climate change changing who can work outside, who can work at all, what other aspects of person's health may be affected by the climate crisis. A scarcity of resources will be affected by the climate crisis. All of these will create an economic, political, cultural, social pressure on a family where women and girls very often are not seen as equal. And in some cases, that's putting it mildly, and will bear the brunt of all of the impacts of how climate will affect their family and their community. Next slide. Climate displacement. 80% of climate refugees are women and girls. 150 million more women will be pushed into poverty by 2050 than men, which means the number of women and girls that are being displaced may very well increase to far more than 80%. There has been a study that started with the Columbia University, which indicated that if we didn't curtail the rise in heat and the rise in temperatures, that it could be billions of people who are displaced, and women and girls' number of being trafficked, being forced into early and forced marriage, into displacement migration would skyrocket. 37 billion in annual income gap from heat stress alone is predicted. Next slide. The funding scandal. well, I could spend a whole event on talking about the funding scandal at the UN, but this is focused on climate-related development funding, which addresses gender equality. It is 0.04%. We know climate change accelerates violence against women. We know the mechanisms, we have the data, and we fund the response at 0.04%. Next slide. Child trafficking in conflict. The trend is 1 in 4 of the children living in countries affected by conflict, fragility, or disaster will be displaced and increase the risk of child trafficking. Gendered forms, sexual exploitation, child marriage, domestic servitude are likely boys, underreported, underidentified. Root causes, racism, xenophobia, discrimination against minorities. Next slide. $1.5 trillion is the annual cost of violence against women. That can be 3.7% of GDP in some countries, yet 0.2% of development assistance goes to prevention. Do you see a theme here, folks? Next slide. We don't have a violence problem, we have an impunity problem. The question before us is not whether we can afford to act, the question is whether we can afford not to. Next slide. I have also taken the liberty of noting key statistics for reference. Regarding a scale, 85,000 women and girls were killed in 2023. 610 million children with mothers experienced intimate partner violence. 1.8 billion women lack cyber protection. 142.6 million females are missing, and 1.68 million children experience violent punishment. The trends that are increasing. Femicide rates are increasing globally. 59% increase in incel rhetoric, misogynist language. 7 times increase in sexual violence with certain migrants, and 550% increase in deep fakes between 2019 and 2023. Climate violence, we've talked about that. 28% increase femicide during heat waves, 4.7 violence increase per 1 degree centimeter rise. 80% climate refugees are women and girls, 158 million more women in poverty by 2050, and 0.04% climate finance addresses these issues regarding gender. Technology, 90 to 95% deep fakes are NCII, 90% target women, 97% C-SCAM shows girls, 97%, and around 40% countries have cyber harassment laws, which means over 50% are still not addressing it. Next slide. These discuss the official documents, agency reports, research studies, and other sources that were made regarding this particular presentation. There's also 2 new studies which the citations will be included with the communications director. Next slide. Okay. Folks, we don't have a violence problem. We have an impunity problem. The question before us is not whether we can afford to act. The question is whether we can afford not to. Soroptimists, you may be asking, well, what can we do? Many of you are already doing it. The first and foremost thing I would recommend is people, governments, communities, regions, international groups, and countries that are represented in the UN won't do anything unless they're educated about what the issues here really are. And that's what we are all good at. We need to educate our public and anyone that we're coming into contact with who's willing to listen what the issues are, how serious they are, and they're only on the increase. The other thing we need to do is to focus our efforts, if you will, on not only governments to change their policies, to change their laws, and to, wait for it, actually implement those policies and laws. We need to focus our attention to those groups and indicate that we are going to hold them accountable. We are no longer going to endure business as usual, because with business as usual, women and girls are continuing to die and the numbers are just increasing. And with us constituting 50% of the population, that is a tragedy for obviously those women and girls, their families, but for communities, for regions, for states, and for the world. The other thing that we need to do is focus on private entities and corporations. We need to have regulations and laws that make the platforms, social platforms, accountable for what they're showing and for the profits that they're receiving as a result of these particular misogynist platforms. We need to make companies which have phones, which do, I've even heard about cameras, doorbells, any type of thing that has an internet platform that can be used to control, stalk, or note where a particular victim might be, all right? We need to have those entities accountable as well. They are aiding and abetting stalking and control, which is a huge problem online, not only for violence against women, but it is a precursor for femicides as well. Finally, we need to talk about financial support. We need to talk about countries, communities, and the international groups, as well as regions, contributing what they have pledged to do, and in many cases, increase that contribution to help support women and girls in all the various challenges that they are now facing and that are on the increase. Without doing that, it's basically like you're saying, okay, here's a canoe, you paddle to the next island. Oh, we forgot to tell you that it's leaking, and it continues to leak even more. Those are some of the recommendations, and I suspect that other people who are lecturing here will talk to you about even more things that we can do. But as I see it, if we don't educate people, starting with just general education and critical thinking and digital literacy and financial literacy and climate literacy, if we don't do those basics and then carry on our education to our communities, to our regions, to our states, to our world, people will still be groping in the dark, trying to either deal with as it comes along in reaction to these crises or to ignore it because, after all, they do not understand the gravity of the problem. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. If you have any questions about citations, please reach out to Soroptimist International and we'll make sure that you get those citations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Linda. So we'll go on to introducing Berthe, to harmful gender stereotypes and patriarchal norms. Thank you, Berthe. Welcome.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. After all these statistics, wow, we have to do something.
Yes.
I will tackle one of the most deepest rooted barriers to equality: the persistence of harmful gender norms and patriarchal norms that tolerate them. Addressing harmful gender norms and fostering safe environments are key to preventing gender-based violence. Next slide, please. But let me first give you an explanation because there are some confusions. Patriarchal norms are social rules and expectations that give men main power and privileges, while influencing and limiting the role of women. Further, they shape behavior, relationships, and institutions such as family, workplaces, laws, to reinforce unequal powers and systematic gender inequality. Example, gender pay gaps, woman disproportional handling unpaid domestic care, male domination in leadership roles. Harmful stereotypes, that is, simplistic and generalized assumptions about people based on race, gender, age, religion, or disability. They arise from cultural norms and historical narratives, and they can reinforce negative biases, restrict opportunities, and fuel discrimination by reducing individuals to a single limiting label, rather than recognizing their full potential. Example, blonde women are dumb, black men are pimps. We all know the truth about this. Both patriarchy and stereotyping are not a misunderstanding. It is not a mistake. It's a system which is built to maintain and to defend the limit and to limit women, monitor gender expression, and control power. These structures shape expectations from birth, restrict human potential, and reproduce inequality across generations. They determine who is heard, who is valued, who is relieved, and who is safe. Addressing them is not optional. It is a global responsibility. Patriarchal systems normalize unequal power relationships and reinforce the idea that women and girls must be compliant and men must be dominant. Such beliefs undermine dignity, violate human rights, and hinder the achievement of the SDGs. And then society wonders why violence persists, why inequality grows, and why the world is less peaceful and less just than it could be. Next slide, please. The data are clear. Where gender stereotypes prevail, violence against women and girls increases, access to education drops, women's economic participation declines, representation in decision-making is weakened, and the recent online influencers create a new danger, targeting twice women at the rate of men. Next slide, please. Patriarchal norms nor stereotyping didn't emerge overnight, and they will not disappear overnight. We must change the narrative. Equality is not a threat to the tradition. It's a foundation for stability, prosperity, and peace. Transforming them is not a merely an aspiration. It's a global obligation rooted in the UN documents. So we must address these norms through coordinated multi-level actions by implementing gender-responsive laws in line with CEDAW, and not some watering down version to protect the status quo. We need to advance commitments under the Beijing Platform for Action and not some symbolic commitments. We need to integrate gender transformative education recommended by UNESCO and not some selective education. We need to strengthen survivors-centered services guided by UN Women or WHO and not some fake support. And we must ensure that policy alignment that policy is aligned with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we think especially about SDG 4, 5, 8, 10, and 16. And this not in theory, but in policy, in budget, and in leadership. Next, please. We must applaud the speech of Mrs. Mahdi, the Executive Director of UN Women, that across global gender equality movements, men's engagement has often been framed as supportive rather than transformative. But one truth must be spoken, even if it makes us uncomfortable. Women can't dismantle patriarchy by themselves. Recognizing the UN commitments requires that men and boys act as co-agents of systematic change, challenging patriarchal norms and redistributing power and care, and advocating for institutional accountability. Next, please. The central message is dismantling patriarchal norms and stereotyping, and this requires engaging men and boys as active partners in achieving the SDG 5 global gender equality. And to support this, UN Women and the He for She movement created a new toolkit, the Barbershop Toolkit 2.1 in 2025. This is a comprehensive resource that guides facilitators in leading peer-based discussion with men and boys. This framework is built on safe places, centering lived experiences, and co-leading with women rather than overshadowing them. The toolkit reframes gender equality dialogue as a space for men to reflect on how patriarchal norms harms everyone. This methodology calls for honest dialogue, self-reflection, shared accountability, and a focus on power dynamics. It emphasizes the intersectional nature of patriarchy and the varied experience of masculinity and discrimination. This updated toolkit addresses urgent issues such as gender-based violence, prevention, digital masculinity and online misogyny, shared caregiving responsibilities, men's mental health, and the link between gender equality and a broader justice issue, such as climate action and economic inequalities. Above all, the Barbershop Toolkit approach will transform the conversations into commitment, urging institutions and individuals to set goals, measure progress, and take collective action. It encourages men to evolve from passive supporters to active co-leaders who use their influence to dismantle inequitable systems without dominating women. Next slide, please. Efforts to change harmful social norms and prevent gender-based violence are underway, but the progress remains uneven and for the moment only across the Western world. Governments and communities must intensify actions to challenge these norms, create safe environments, and expand education and life skills programs. Everyone, including institutions and individuals, are urged to implement gender equality practices in their work and in their life, to foster spaces where harmful norms can be discussed and questioned, where leaders can be trained how to apply equality in practice, and where we can support the youth who challenges the stereotypes already, and where we can address the institutions' biases. The Women's Empowerment Principles, WEP, offers a framework for this work, and we can use it by demonstrating strong leadership at the highest level to advance gender equality. 2, treat all women and men fairly, upholding human rights and non-discrimination at work. 3, ensure health, safety, and well-being for all. 4, support education, training, and the professional development for all women and girls. 5, empower all women and girls through business practices, including supply chain and marketing. 6, promote gender equality in communities through advocacy and partnership. And 7, measures and publicly report progress on the achieving of the gender equality. Next slide, please. And allow me to tell you a true story about change by a man. In the beginning, I thought it would be difficult talking with men and boys about women's rights and the violence against women. I wasn't sure how they would react, but after going through the curriculum myself, I saw how necessary it is. These conversations are not just important, they are urgent. When men recognize women's roles and support them, families are getting stronger, communities are getting stronger. Empowering women is not just their responsibility, it's also our, Dixit the man. So change is possible if the will is there. Next slide, please. Women's and feminist movements have long been powerful agents of change. And as we look towards CSW 70, we must boldly commit to transforming the narratives and the systems that perpetuate gender inequality. This includes advancing gender-based and evidence-based proof of violence against women and girls, evidence-based education, reinforcing gender-responsive legislation, strengthening survivor-centered services, and investing in programs that empower women and girls. Let us act at the CSW 70 by achieving access to cultural justice, which requires coordinated and multi-level action, where we engage men and boys as allies, promoting healthy models for masculinity and advocating for strong gender justice laws and meaningful penalties. We must also confront rising digital misogyny or sexism by requiring social media platforms to control abused contents and by elevating positive male role models. We must reaffirm our commitment to dismantling the patriarchal norms, challenging discrimination in all its forms, and ensuring that every woman and girl can live with freedom, dignity, and equal opportunity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Berthe, very much. Thank you for encouraging us to change the narrative for these harmful gender stereotypes and patriarchal norms. Thank you for giving us some tools and ideas of how to cater and start putting them within projects around these tools, the 5 points of gender and patriarchy, the key statistics and key areas within current frameworks around the gender equality, working with men and boys that is critical, and the barbershop toolkit 2.0, he for she, the advocacy for women's empowerment principles, which is the framework for us, give us examples for action and advocacy to break the silence and become agents for change. Thank you very much. I'd like to now call on any questions from the audience. Do you know any that have come through, Margaret?
Yes, we've got 2 from Lisa Davis. Both relate to strangulation, which you mentioned earlier, Lee. Lisa says, the strangulation, does this apply to every country in the world? Obviously, we do not have guns in the UK, so these men must kill in other ways unless they have a gun license and a gun And then her second point, stroke question, I am starting to think strangulation and threat to kill animals, etc., that the male is a psychopath, question mark.
Yes, I'm not licensed to answer that, I'm afraid. If Linda was here, she may. Does anyone else have? Oh, yes, Lola.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that a little bit. As I worked domestic violence cases, and that was one of my areas of expertise when I worked in law enforcement. These crimes often result in death. Gun is, I don't want to say is an easy tool in the United States, but it is prevalently used here in the United States. In the UK, you have a lot of crimes that end in violence and death using knives and machetes. So I think the correlation, and yeah, I don't want to step on Linda's toes with her presentation, but I think ultimately the result is death. And so that is the case. With regards to animal abuse, there are a lot of statistics that show that if you have children, and unfortunately, it's mostly with young boys who start to harm animals when they're young, have a propensity, and are on track to becoming violent in a lot of ways as they grow older, whether it's sexual assault, violence, or even arson. So there's a lot of similarities and paths that go on to ultimately killing someone. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Thank you, Lola.
I was wondering if we can get data, because every country in the world's different, their laws, the gun laws and all the laws. And I just wondered if, say, the UK, they used other things, in Australia and something else, and then we could start working on removing these things or sorting the behaviours out.
So if I may just
Lola?
add to that, in the United States, so all law enforcement agencies provide statistics or their crime stats to the FBI. And so that's all collected and then presented at the end of the year or the next year after it's all collated. The problem with that, and I don't know what is being used in other countries such as the UK and Australia and across the EU. Some of the problems with that, and I'll tell you only because I've experienced it working in law enforcement, providing stats on crimes that have occurred in your community. Sometimes I don't want to say that it happens all the time, but sometimes these statistics are massaged, so to say, because what happens then is once it's reported, and I'll use the city of Glendale where I worked, not that we did it, but what happens is when these reports are then finalized and presented to the nation, if you have a high crime rate in your community or your city, then it impacts that community financially. Your insurance rates will go up, property values will start to decrease. So it's a little it's great to have these statistics, but sometimes they're not presented holistically, if I can say that.
So for UK, we write to Keir Starmer because he's a criminal lawyer and he does know what goes on. For other countries, who do they write to? Because I wouldn't know. And ask for help on what goes on. Would that be a start, or is that not correct?
I'm sorry, one more time, if I could. I didn't quite understand your question.
So in the UK, we write to our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He's a criminal lawyer. He does know what goes on. However, in other countries, different things happen in different ways, I suspect. So do the different Soroptimists write to their governments and ask for help and put things forward, or would that not be helpful to find out exactly what happens, then look at the behaviours and see how they can stop the behaviours? I don't know, because I'm not a psychotherapist.
Yeah, so in terms of law enforcement, I would say, and that was part of my presentation, is that what happens in my community may not necessarily be on par with what's happening in your community. And I'll just take Los Angeles County for an example, which is in Southern California. We have over, I don't know, I think 10 million people that reside in LA County, which is a vast number of people. What happens in the city of Glendale, which is part of the LA County, would be different than what happens in, let's say, a less affluent community. So in our community, we had predominantly burglaries and property crimes, as opposed to another community that would have more violent crimes or crimes against other humans. So your question is on par. Reach out to your local government and your local law enforcement agencies to find out specifically what's happening there for you to be able to address it and help put in education and preventative measures.
Thank you.
And gather other Soroptimists to do a bit of research to find out that, so you've got your facts and data before you go to the decision makers. Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions in the chat box, Margaret?
No more questions, Lee.
No? Thank you. Soo-Young, would you like to say a few words? You're muted.
Yeah, thank you, Lee, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words. I did say a few words earlier, but it was through a message, a video message. I'd like to first say Happy Human Rights Day today, everyone. I thank all the speakers for their wonderful insights on the different topics that affect our human rights. Today also marks the end of the 16 days of activism to stop violence against women. However, we shall not be silent. We must continue to not only talk, but walk the talk to stop violence against women and girls, which is the greatest violation of their human rights. Here at UNEA 7, I'm in Nairobi now, I hear that human rights are also being affected by environmental issues, worsened by climate change, of course. It is clear that when the planet suffers, women and girls suffer first. On the topic of migration, which was mentioned by Linda, one of the sessions at the UNEA was specifically on migration due to climate and environmental issues, not just based on conflicts, but even climate affects migration. So with migration, of course, the violence against women and girls are one of the very negative violations, because it will probably be people abusing them based on their status as migration as refugees. So also violence and inequality and fear, it grows when resources disappear and the communities are really stressed out. So we acknowledge that protecting women and girls and protecting Mother Earth are inseparable. A damaged planet increases vulnerability, but safe lives strengthen our world. Soroptimists must continue to break the silence, raise our voices loud and clear, end the violence, uphold human rights, and defend our planet. Because every woman, every girl, and every community deserves a future that is safe, just, and sustainable. On the right to a healthy environment, who better than the Executive Director of UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, Inga Anderson, to champion the UN recognition of the universal right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, urging nations to implement their right fully to empower action against the triple planetary crisis. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here with us to speak out on all the possible human rights violation, and some solutions were given, data was given, and thank all of you, especially Linda, for all the research you did. A lot of data for us to absorb, but thank you so very, very much to Lola, to early on, Tania, of course, Berthe. Thank you so much. And of course to Lee for dealing with Linda's topic. So thank you so much for everyone.
Thank you, Soo-Young. Thank you. I just want to say a few words about putting this session together because everyone knows violence against women is a major barrier to gender equality and to women's human rights. And we didn't want to present what you already know and what everyone does want to know. What we try to do is to have the emerging issues, and they are accelerating at such a rate we don't quite understand. So to have these emerging issues come through, to have the governance, to have frameworks, to have ideas through each presentation, to be able to lift our impact of projects that we can do around the globe. So if we are armed with statistics that I think Linda is one of the best on the globe for the research that she does, and she works with the United Nations and provides them with research. So with having all those statistics, all of the tools that have come to us this evening from Tania, Lola, Berthe, and of course, Linda, it will help us going forward to do projects. The hours we spend doing projects for women and girls hopefully will be a greater impact, but to do research and plan your projects so that we can start to stop this acceleration of violence against women. And I just wish to read you something that I read that gave me hope when I started looking and seeing what subjects we could cover. This is from Simi Sami Bohos, which is the UN Women Executive Director. Violence against women and girls is not inevitable. In fact, we have more evidence than ever on how to prevent and end it. States now need to take actions with a comprehensive approach that is informed and monitored by data and which can be adopted to rapidly changing contexts. Policies and programs can include accelerating reform of discriminatory legal frameworks, ensuring essential services are available and accessible to survivors, as well as boosting efforts to prosecute offenders. I had never read before that there may be hope, that we know and we are collecting data to end this. So what we've done tonight, everything that's come together, I see, is start to give you the tools and information for you to then go back and start to implement and look at national advocacy, looking at the way we can join together across borders to make it even a little bit like what Lisa was suggesting. We can cross borders and come to a greater and more impactful projects to help women and girls to stop this violence against women. So I personally would like to thank you. This will be our last webinar, President Soo-Young and myself, as we finish our roles on the 31st of December of this year. And both Berthe and Renata is our president-elect. She's here too. Hello, Renata. I didn't see you earlier. I've only just seen you. So Renata takes over from Soo-Young on the 1st of January, and Berthe takes over from me on the 1st of January. So on behalf of Soo-Young and myself, we wish you both all the best for the future. And we know that you'll do very well. We're in very good hands. Thank you very much. And thank you for the speakers and headquarters for all the support that we've had, as well as your attendance. Thank you.